Hi folks, today we're going to talk about teaching your first yoga class, and specifically we're going to talk about preparing your cues for teaching yoga. So if you're a yoga teacher in training or a new yoga teacher, I understand that preparing your cues for your first classes can be overwhelming. I've been teaching yoga teachers for 20 years now, and none of us go into teaching yoga feeling 100% confident of our cues because yoga teaching can at first be really overwhelming. Remembering your sequence, what cues you're going to use, the props you want to integrate into class, and then moving, breathing, speaking, keeping an eye on your students, keeping an eye on the time. It's all so much at first. And I just want to assure you that it does get easier. You find your rhythm, you find your flow, your cues come more naturally without having to prepare them in advance. You'll have more ability to adapt and adjust in the moment. But to get there, you have to start here with maybe feeling a bit unsure, feeling a bit unready, and with a brain chock full of everything that you've learned. What helps is some preparation, some mental rehearsal, and then just getting out there and putting all that you've learned into practice. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how do you prepare? And I get questions all the time about whether people should write out their cues in advance or bring a script to class, and how do you know what cues you're going to need and when you're going to need them. So that's what we're going to dig into, and on how you can go into teaching feeling a lot more prepared. So to begin, let's start by thinking about what learning and preparatory strategies work for you. So you might have heard the idea of people having specific learning styles, auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. And while these aren't backed up by learning data, how we learn is a lot more complex and varied. You might find that you have some learning and preparation strategies that do work better for you. So if you find that you're helped in your studies by writing, write out your cues in advance as you study your poses, as you prepare your classes, handwrite, make a spreadsheet, make a chart, draw pictures of poses, write out cues next to them, whatever writing strategy works for you. If you learn and integrate knowledge by doing or by speaking, then speak your cues out loud while you practice on your own mat. You know, talk to the dog, talk to the cat, talk to the wall. Saying the words out loud while you breathe and move is not only going to help you remember your cues, but it's going to help you with finding your rhythm of breathing, moving, and cueing and make that more comfortable. Then if you learn by hearing, listen to or watch, the class videos, have those cues coming into your ears on a regular basis. I know one of our grads, she had a long commute by car every day. So she used to put on a class on her phone, not watch it, of course, just listen to the cues as she drove, and having those cues in that rhythm coming into her brains on a regular basis really helped her to integrate and remember them, helped her work on her pronunciation when it came time to teach. So writing, hearing, speaking, or if you like, combine those methods, use them all, get curious. All of those strategies can really help you in your learning and processing and embodying. And I want to mention, particularly if you're going to be teaching in a language other than your first language, the listening and speaking strategies are especially useful. Then next, we're going to talk about mental and physical rehearsal. So consider your mental and physical rehearsal for teaching, not the teaching as a performance, but to prepare yourself for how you're going to coordinate your body, breath, and voice. And you can also do some dream teaching where you sit down or lie down or get in the bath, relaxed, and imagine yourself teaching the class, doing the demos, using the cues. This can be really helpful. Next, to the question of preparing a script. I get this question all the time about whether writing out a script to read from is a useful strategy. And it's not something that I recommend using for an asana class. If we have our cues written down on paper for the purpose of reading them out, we can end up, stuck with a paper in front of our faces, reading from our script, not looking up and responding to our students. And it can also be really confusing if you step away from your notes for a moment and then come back and you need to find your place again. It can be really stressful. So it's not something I recommend. Also, a script can be a real barrier between you and your students. Having said all that, if having something written down gives you confidence, it's kind of an emotional support system. I do have some strategies that might be useful. First, bring your sequence on paper. That might be the poses written out, it might be pictures. Note down your flow, your breath work, your asanas, your transitions, your relaxation. Note down the time you think each sequence is going to take. And if you aren't sure that your sequence is going to fit in the time allotted, you might organize your sequence so that you have essential poses, and then you've got some additions you can slot in if you find that there's time in those moments. And again, you can have it written out or in pictures, something easy to read. So imagine it's on the floor by your mat and you're standing talking to your students. You want to be able to read it. So not too much detail, big print, especially if you wear glasses. Next, I want to talk about your body. When when we're first teaching, we can imagine that we have to hold all of the knowledge in our heads. But remember that your yoga knowledge also lives in your body. So you can trust yourself and remember that if you forget a cue, your demos can help you not only instruct the movement, but also get on track with your verbal cues. And this is where your deep practice matters, and practicing um, a routine sequence matters, something that you can depend on. Your body will then know what's next and you can follow your body. You can let your body lead. And then if the cues don't come, you can just ask yourself, what am I doing? Okay, my arms are out. I'm going to say that, and say that out loud as the next cue. So, say you're in triangle. You've stepped out to the side, you freeze, what's next? Ask your body. Arms up. Hips rotated. Hinge at the front hip. All of this can come through your body and into your voice. Um, so I hope that's useful. Also, I want to say that as a new teacher, you might find that you're just using the cues that you've memorized. And I want to say that that's okay. Like, that's where we're going to get our cues from at first. And it's great when you're practicing and developing your skills to use the cues that you've heard over the years from your teachers and that you've memorized. Know that there will come a time when you look up from your memorized cues and look at your students and see that they need help, and then your refining cues and your corrective cues and cues that are unique to you and your class will be ready to come out. So your cues are always evolving, but where they start might be something like 3 essential cues. And this is a strategy that we use in our teacher training. So we encourage students to develop 3 essential cues for each pose. So imagine if you only had 3 cues to guide students into an asana with breath. What would they be? Write them down, make a chart, speak them out loud when you do your practice. Get those essential cues embedded in your body and mind. And I know some very technical poses, you might need more than 3 cues, but we want to keep it to basics. Your 3 essential cues are generally instructive cues. These are your do this, do that cues. Arms out, step your feet wide. And from there, once you've got those 3 essential cues rolling, you can start to explore further cueing layers like imagery cues, refining cues, feeling cues. So then when you are doing your practice teaching, use those essential cues. And when you're able, you can add some of those refining cues. You can start dealing with the nuances based on what you see your students needing. So it's not just the cues you remember, it's the cues they need and when they need them. Next, I want to address the question of what if I lose my cues in the middle of class? And you will. We all do. After 3 decades of teaching, I still sometimes lose my cues. There will be times when you're in the midst of teaching and you just blank on what you were going to say. And I know very well the panic we can feel when we've lost a word or our breath or our lefts and rights. You get this moment of panic. I just want you to know it's not an emergency. Like, you can take a breath. You can say, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. You can check in with your body. You can even ask your students, where are we going next? If your mind has really gone blank and you really are in a panic, get your students into a safe place. Child or down dog are great options. And you don't even have to cue those. You can just say, okay, let's come to child's pose. And then give yourself a moment to breathe, to ground, to get back into your body. You might check on your sequence. Think about what you can do next that will be comfortable for you and that will make sense for your students and for where you're at in your sequence. Most importantly, remember, no one's going to die from you forgetting your cues or your sequence. So calm your body down, reset, and return. The most common cue that we're going to forget, I should mention, is our lefts and rights. It's the most common thing that happens. We just lose track of them. And I've got to say, I usually have a really good handle on my lefts and rights. But years ago, when I was teaching public classes, I used to teach an 8 class day. It wasn't ideal. It just kind of worked out that way. I rolled with it for a few months. It was a very long day, starting with classes and then privates and then some corporate classes and then back to studio classes. And by the end of the day, I would be tired and I would invariably lose track of my lefts and rights. And so I just kind of made that part of my class. I would call out which leg and my students would answer. And it was lighthearted and connected us as a community. It gave my students something to contribute to class. And I was a memorable teacher to them. It didn't make them think I didn't know what I was doing as a yoga teacher. They remembered me as, the teacher with the great sequences who also doesn't happen to know her lefts and rights. And so it's okay. It's okay if you lose track of things. I think that we can feel such a bright spotlight when we first start teaching. And I think it's good to remember that teaching's not a performance, it's a conversation. It's not you on stage performing perfection. It's you on the ground, guiding and supporting your students, everybody learning together. And it's great for your students to contribute to that conversation. The point isn't to be perfect, it's to be helpful. So your students are the point. Their safety, their learning, their experience is the point. So if there's going to be a spotlight in your yoga class, put the spotlight on your students. What do they need in this moment? This is actually not only a great strategy to lead a great class and to ensure that your class remains student oriented, but it's a great strategy to reduce your own nerves. When you keep turning the spotlight on your students, it's a less harsh spotlight for you. Um, and for some of us, the very idea of a spotlight is what makes us forget everything that we've learned about yoga. So that's something to remember. So to wrap up, my hope for every new teacher is that they can find a ground to stand on. Not that they've memorized everything, but that they feel grounded and supported and empowered on the mat at the front of the class. And from that space, they can help their students find the same. When you are grounded, you can access the knowledge that you've built up. You can respond to what's happening in the moment in the room, and you can trust the words that are coming out of your mouth. And what makes all of that happen is practice. So I hope that you've found some strategies here helpful. Remember, the most important strategy is practice. Get started where you're at and let yourself be in the process of learning, and then let yourself flow. Thanks for listening and for joining me on the journey, and I look forward to seeing y'all soon. Bye.